All right, let's just jump right in. We all know this, right? Mobile users today, they expect a totally seamless, perfect experience every single time they tap open an app. But here's the catch. A lot of development teams are kind of sabotaging their own success with a flawed one-size-fits-all testing approach. We're going to break down exactly why treating native and hybrid apps the same is such a huge mistake.
So let me just ask you this straight up. Is your app's biggest flaw hiding in plain sight, right there in your test plan? The risks of getting this wrong are absolutely real. We're talking everything from user frustration to people just straight up deleting your app. And the worst part, these flaws often stay hidden until it's way, way too late.
And that brings us to the main event, the one-size-fits-all mistake. The idea that you can just copy and paste your testing strategy from a native app to a hybrid app, honestly, it's one of the most common and most costly errors you can make in mobile development.
And the consequences? They're pretty rough. You see, teams push their apps live, feeling good about it, and then, bam! They're just flooded with reports of critical bugs, random crashes, or weird layout issues on certain devices. The problem usually isn't the code itself, but the fact that it wasn't tested correctly for its specific architecture.
Okay, so to fix this, we've got to go back to basics. If you want to test your app the right way, you first have to really understand the deep architectural differences between native and hybrid apps. They are not the same thing, and that's the key here.
So check this out. On the left, you've got native apps. These are built with platform-specific languages, like Kotlin for Android or Swift for iOS. They talk directly to the phone's hardware, which is why they feel so incredibly fast and fluid. Then, on the right, you have hybrid apps. These are built from a single codebase, think React Native or Flutter, and then run inside a kind of web-like wrapper. It's awesome for developing faster, but it adds extra layers of complexity that you absolutely have to test for.
And one of the biggest pieces of that complexity is something called the bridge. In a hybrid app, this is the layer that has to translate all the web code into commands the phone can actually understand, like, hey, use the camera or get the GPS location. Think of it as a translator. And just like any translator, it can make mistakes. This bridge is a super common source of bugs that just doesn't even exist in the native world.
Okay, so building on that, now that we get the core difference, let's dig into exactly where the testing plans for these two app types have to split off. This is where you can really start to spot the potential gaps in your own strategy.
First up, let's talk about performance and responsiveness. This is where those architectural differences become super obvious and, frankly, super frustrating for your users. We all know a slow, laggy app is a deleted app. It's as simple as that. So the thing to realize is you're looking for totally different kinds of problems. For a native app, you're hunting for things like memory leaks or big CPU spikes. But for a hybrid app, the slowness is usually coming from those extra layers. Stuff like delays in rendering the view, how long it takes to fetch data, or bottlenecks inside the framework itself. You have to test for these specific hybrid problems.
Next, the look and feel, the UI and UX. How you check that your app looks polished and feels consistent is completely different depending on the architecture. It's not just about, does the button work? It's, how does it look and feel on every single device out there?
And I'm pretty sure every developer has felt this exact pain. You spend hours, maybe days, getting the layout just perfect on your emulator. You ship it, and then you get that dreaded one-star review with a screenshot showing your buttons all jumbled and overlapping on some real-world phone you've never even heard of. It's so frustrating, and it's a classic sign of a testing gap.
And the reason this happens is right here. Native UI testing is all about making sure you're following the strict design rules of the OS, like Android's material design. But hybrid UI, it's way less predictable. The same code can look totally different depending on the phone's WebView version or its screen density. So you have to hunt for these visual glitches across a huge range of different screens.
All right, let's get into automation. Automating tests is totally key to moving fast, but picking the right tool depends entirely on your app's architecture. And what works perfectly for a native app can be a total disaster for a hybrid one.
This slide really lays out the trade-offs. For native apps, you have tools like Espresso for Android that are built-in and rock-solid. For hybrid, you're probably using something like APM. But fair warning, these tools can create flaky tests. That's because they're constantly having to switch between the native world and the web world, and sometimes they just get confused and fail a test for no good reason.
Now for a big one, a topic that can literally make or break user trust: security. Yeah, all apps need serious security testing, but hybrid apps bring in these extra layers that can create some really unique and often overlooked vulnerabilities.
The key difference to focus on here is the attack surface. With a native app, you're worried about stuff like strong encryption and making sure data is stored securely on the device. But with a hybrid app, you've got to worry about all that, plus a bunch of web-based attacks, like insecure data getting passed over that bridge we talked about, or even malicious JavaScript injections. It's a whole different ballgame.
So all of this leads to one critical conclusion. You have to understand the real device difference. Relying only on emulators is like practicing for a marathon by only ever running on a treadmill. It can give you a really dangerous false sense of security.
Look, emulators are fantastic tools, don't get me wrong, but they just can't replicate the messy reality of the real world. They can't show you how your app will crawl on a bad network connection, how it's going to drain the battery on a 2-year-old phone, or how it'll react to the weird hardware quirks of a specific brand.
And that is why real device testing isn't just a nice-to-have. It is the gold standard. It's the only way to know, for sure, how your app is going to perform in the hands of actual users on the phones they actually own. This is especially true for hybrid apps, where performance can be all over the place from one device to the next.
And this is where a lot of teams turn for help. Instead of trying to buy and maintain a massive lab full of phones yourself, services like 12testers14days.com have popped up to solve this exact problem. They take your app, test it across a whole fleet of real Android devices, and then hand you back a detailed report on every single bug, performance lag, and UI glitch they found.
So let's bring this all home. The big takeaway here is really about a shift in your mindset. You've got to stop testing based on assumptions you make in a perfect, clean lab environment and start testing for reality. This table is a perfect summary of everything we've just talked about. Just look at the differences in focus between native and hybrid across every single category, from performance down to security. And check out that last row. For real device testing, it goes from important for native to essential for hybrid. I mean, that really says it all, doesn't it?
And that really is the bottom line. The most reliable, the highest-rated apps out there, they aren't the result of guesswork. They are built, they are forged through tough, architecture-aware, real-world testing.
So I'll leave you with this one last thought to chew on. Are you really truly testing your app for how it's built and where it's most likely to fail? Or are you just checking to see if it looks okay on your own phone? The answer to that question could be the difference between a 1-star review and a 5-star success.